going to get very, very bright for a minute. There we go. So this first class is going to be kind of a mix. It's going to be a mix of what this mentorship program is about. It's also going to talk about the dark night of the soul, spiritual awakening 101, etc. If you guys have taken some of my classes before, then this may be something you've already kind of heard about. So what I'm going to do is go over a little bit about me, how I was raised, how I got into this, and so on, because one of the things that I find is rampant right now on all social media is that no one seems to want to talk about why they got into this. They only got into it because it was cool in the last few years, etc. And unfortunately, those of us that have been doing this a very long time, we end up getting put into this category of, oh, well, they're only doing it because they're cool, because it's cool. They're only doing it because this or that or whatever. There are a few of us on social media that have been doing this most of our life. They have been doing this a very long time. One of the other things that cracks me up too is, and this has been thrown around at me and at people like Witchfoot and some of the other older practitioners that are on, just some really nasty negative comments. And so I'm glad that this is the first class I'm starting with, because I want to let you guys know how I got into this, why I do what I do, why I teach. Do I consider myself an expert in anything or everything? No, absolutely not. I know that some of you guys can see behind me, or you've seen in videos, all the books I have. I am continually reading. I am continually moving forward. I am continually learning. At this point in my life, I hold 63 certifications. I think for a minute, because I'm working on 2 more. 63 certifications in all different aspects of life. So let me tell you guys just a little bit about me. I was raised with very eclectic, weird parents. I always call my parents upper middle class hippies. My dad grew up with a mom who is Cherokee and Potawatomi. His grandma, we called her Smoking Granny. She smoked a pipe till the day she died. Practiced medicine and so on. Did I grow up Native American? Nope. I grew up with some of the things because the mountains were church. I grew up in Colorado. The mountains were our church. I was taught that you use everything. You don't throw anything away. Everything has a purpose. You respect nature. You respect living beings. And I was also raised that every single culture is beautiful. Every single practice is beautiful. So my parents, all growing up, were part of different diversity cultures, diversity programs, etc. throughout Colorado and Oklahoma. My dad used to travel around to different schools and would teach about several different things, different aspects. One of them being some of the ways that he grew up. And so I had kind of the cool dad, right? But whenever growing up, I didn't realize I grew up any different than anybody else. I grew up with a mix of Celtic traditional practices with American folk magic practices. And we're going to talk about that in a minute too, because when I say American folk magic, most people laugh, especially on social media, because they haven't done their homework and they don't know what American folk magic is. I also grew up with a little bit of a Southern Baptist twist in there. And this is another thing where people get a little prickly when I say this. If you grew up or you practice Southern Baptist, traditional Southern Baptist practices, you practice American folk magic. You practice American folk magic. A lot of the things with the Southern Baptist practice are not in the Bible. They are a mix of Celtic, Appalachian, and Ozark mountain magic. And it's fantastic. I'm not going to lie. It's fantastic. So whenever I was 19, I contracted bacterial meningitis. And we were out of state at the time. I was rushed back here, 4.5 hour drive. By the time we got to the hospital, my fever was over 104. As hospitals did then, they do now. They kind of ignore things. And I sat in the waiting room until A doctor just happened to walk by and caught a look at me and got me rushed back. By then, my fever was 105. I died in the emergency room. They had to bring me back. And when I say die, as in my heart stopped, my brain stopped, no longer living, dead. They brought me back. I died 2 days later in the ICU. Same thing. They had to bring me back. This time they had to put me in a medical coma for 2 weeks. And I will have to do a video about that because it is a little bit long to talk about. But I learned things. No, I didn't hear anybody talk to me when I was in a coma because I wasn't here. I was somewhere else. Whenever I came back, I wanted to talk about what I saw because I didn't understand it. The internet wasn't a thing. This was 1996. It was a baby thing. It was in no way the thing it is now. So I had no one to talk to. I had synesthesia as a kid, but that really exacerbated it. So I have a lot of damage to the left side of my brain because that's where the majority of the swelling was. That's where my seizures start, etc. So the neurologist that I had that woke me up, pulled me out of the coma, wanted to hear all about it and then retired 2 months later. And so after that, everybody told me, oh, it was a coma dream. It was, you're making things up. Like, you've seen too many movies. And I'm sure that most of you guys heard that as a kid. If you are Gen X, if you are a millennial, an older millennial, chances are you heard that way too much. You have an overactive imagination. You watch too many movies. It's just a dream, and you were dismissed. You were dismissed. Some of us were raised a little differently, where our parents nurtured that, where our parents wanted to hear about our dreams, where our parents wanted to know what we saw, what we felt, etc. And one of the things that I love about right now is that a lot of people that are Gen X, that are millennials, that are having kids, are wanting to hear about their kids' dream. They're wanting to hear about what they saw, what they feel, etc. And I love that so many people are studying that and paying attention. So one of the other aspects of me that prepared me for what I'm doing is, with a lot of brain damage comes something interesting, and I consider this a blessing. I am continually learning. I am continually creating. So I really fell down a rabbit hole of learning, training, creating, etc. And like many of you guys, I had to kind of be in the closet for a long time because I live in Oklahoma. I live in Tulsa. And really, even now, it's not cool. It's not cool to be not Christian. So I have been teaching since 2014. I have taught people before that, just here and there, but professionally since 2014. I have been reading since 2014. And when I tell people that I've been reading professionally since 2014, it's not just me sitting in a shop pulling cards for somebody or me pulling cards for my sister-in-law or whatever. I worked for sites like Purple Ocean, where I started off trial by fire reading for 30 to 40 people every day. I've done my time in the trenches. But one of the things that I find people do not understand, and they go a little crazy when they first hit their spiritual awakening, is what we're going to talk about today. I had no one to explain this to me. I had no one to hold my hand and walk me through it. There were not really books about this readily available, not in Oklahoma. There was no internet. So we're going to talk about what a spiritual awakening is, why they happen. We're going to talk about the dark night of the soul. We're going to talk about all kinds of things. And a lot of you guys are going to listen to some of the things that I say. You're going to listen to, the steps of a spiritual awakening, the steps of the dark night of the soul, and so on. And you're suddenly not going to feel as alone. Because when you go through a spiritual awakening, it's never something nice and easy. It's never that you wake up one morning and go, oh, it's beautiful. I'm going to have a spiritual awakening today. No. It happens from something horrible. It happens from a near-death experience. It happens from a divorce. It happens from losing a child or a parent. It happens from something massive and traumatic that shifts you out of the norm, that shifts you out of where your life was. Now, does it happen to everybody when one of those big things happens? No. No, it doesn't. There are some souls that are not meant to go through a spiritual awakening in that lifetime. I know people that have had horrific things happen to them, and they are still trying to be here because they are not ready for the spiritual awakening aspect yet. And here's the thing, guys. This is why I tell everybody, not everyone is meant to go with you on your path. The people that will never be ready for a spiritual awakening in this life are not going to understand what you're going through. They are not going to understand why you feel the way you feel. They are not going to understand why you're doing the things you're doing. Why you're learning, etc. That's okay. Don't fault them for that. Don't fault anybody for not understanding and not believing the things that you suddenly understand and see and believe. If you look at it in that aspect, you will be much happier on your path, I promise. So let's talk about what a spiritual awakening is. A spiritual awakening is losing the veil that's been over your consciousness that gives you this illusion that you are separate from oneness. A spiritual awakening is a really, really deep, massive revelation. You find that your energy, your mind, everything in you shifts, and you start to become something else, someone else. You start to heal really old wounds and traumas. You start to dissolve false beliefs. You start to lose illusions that you've held your whole life. And it shifts you more toward your true way of being, but toward your soul. A spiritual awakening is something that you feel every aspect. You feel in every aspect. Not just your body, but your mind, your soul, your spirit, your emotions. You physically change. Your looks change. This is why whenever there was a video going around about witchcraft changes the way you look, it absolutely does. Spiritual awakenings change the way you look. It absolutely does. When people find God, it changes the way they look. It absolutely does. And I want to tell you guys one more thing right here in this spot. Everything is the same. Every practice, every bit of faith is the same. Whether you call it the universe, whether you call it God, whether you call it Allah, whether you call it whatever, the one, the great spirit, it's the same. It is literally the same thing. Faith is the same thing. I have faith in the universe. This person may have faith in Jesus. I have faith in the universe. This person may have faith in Allah. I have faith in the universe. This person has faith in the Great Spirit. It's the same. It's the same. When you look at it that way, no matter what your personal beliefs are, you will understand everyone so much better. They may not understand you, and they may not see things the way you do. But if you look at it like that, as the same, you'll understand things on a much, much deeper level than most people around you will. So let's talk about why spiritual awakenings happen. Spiritual awakenings are a natural aspect of a soul's evolution, of them expanding, maturing. Like I said, they happen after an event that forces you to look at life differently. It's such a deeper connection to your soul that your soul has to be ready for that. That's why I said that not everybody is going to be in a spiritual awakening aspect once they hit one of these traumatic events. They're just not. There isn't a right or a wrong way to experience a spiritual awakening. So I really, really hate when I see people that are like, you have to do this and this. No, you don't. It's just like going through the stages of grief. And we're going to talk about that in a minute too. An awakened state of being embraces everyone and everything and experiences all those things differently. So when you're researching, you're reading, and you're learning, don't ever, ever feel like you have to follow someone else's path. I am a big nerd that loves TED Talks. I watch so many fucking TED Talks. One of my absolute favorite people and one of my absolute favorite ones, and this will be in the mentorship program for you guys to watch, and I highly recommend that you take the time to watch it. And I hope that I don't fuck his name up because I always do. Is Master Shi Hang Yi. And one of the quotes in one of his TED Talks that I actually have on my wall, it's fantastic, is this: all of our lifetimes, all of our experiences are too unique to copy the path of someone else. Because there are even times with me that I look at other people and I say, man, I don't do that, or I should do that. I've been practicing longer or whatever. And I have to remind myself of that quote. My life is not like your life. It's not like anybody else's. And your life is not like my life. It's not like anybody else's. Your path is not like mine. My path is not like yours. You're going to fight the urge to compare yourself to other people on their path and their spiritual awakening. So this quote is from a TED Talk called The 5 Hindrances to Self-Mastery. It's a fantastic, fantastic talk. So the main thing I want you guys to keep in mind is that every spiritual awakening is experienced differently. There are some that are sudden. They hit you like that. It is a immediate shift where in a single moment you start to see and realize and move, and the next moment you are not this person anymore. You are this person. Then there are some that take a long time. They're little bitty broken up pieces, all these little traumas, all these little things, and then suddenly you start to lose that veil on a very, very slow, low, bit by bit piece. And then it's just gone. This is why people can be married for 30 or 40 years and suddenly wake up and go, I need to leave. I need to be somewhere else. It's not that anything happened the night before. It's just these little bitty tiny things. And now they are no longer that person. The one thing that is constant in every spiritual awakening is that the truth will come up in front of you no matter how fast or slow it comes. Your life is already altered by that awakening energy. There's no going back from it. There's no going back. Once that energy and that awakening takes over, you start to feel out of control. And it's okay. Everyone does. You're going to feel lost until you understand what's going on, that you are full on in the middle of a spiritual awakening. A lot of people fight it. And this drags out this transformation into a really deep, deep, anxious, depressive state. Other people embrace it and they find this freedom that they never, ever knew existed. Depending on how you handle it, there's no right or wrong way. It will change every aspect of your being. I look at pictures of myself from even just 2021. I look at pictures of myself from 4 or 5 years ago, and I don't recognize that person. I know it's me, but I don't recognize that person. I don't look anything like myself now. You guys will be the same way. You'll look back and you'll go, who's that? Is that what? Like you'll look back and be confused. So let's talk about the dark night of the soul. This is the first step you go through in a spiritual awakening. After you hit the spiritual awakening, you're going to go through this period called the dark night of the soul. It's a period where you feel like you've been cut off from God. If you were Christian, you've been cut off from the divine. You've been cut off from every single thing that you have believed in your life up to now. The wall is down. You are cut off from it. You're floating, you're drifting, and you're not falling. You're just floating, and you have no idea what's going on. The more profound you feel this experience, the darker it can seem for you. This is an event that's so profoundly deep in your spiritual awakening experience, though. Everyone goes through the dark night of the soul multiple times in their spiritual awakening process. It's not one and done. But I want you to look at it like this. It's like walking through the valley of the shadow of death before you can get to the light to prepare your mind and your heart and your soul for the upgrade that's coming. It's like changing clothes. You have to take off the old clothes before you put new clothes on. You have to remove things before you can put things in. You are a finite meat sack vessel. Your brain is finite. You have to lose things before you can put new things in. The universe will pull things out of your path, sometimes very violently, before it will allow new things to come in. Now, there are a ton of schools of thought on the dark night of the soul. And I would recommend that you guys all kind of fall down the rabbit hole a little bit. I will put some things in the class on the site for this. But there's a lot of things that you guys probably never realized talked about balance and talked about this in particular. Because you have the dark night of the soul, and then you have this glowing, beautiful, awakened soul. So when you look at things like birth and death, when you look at things like yin and yang, those are ways of looking at the awakening process. At the core of it, dark night of the soul is very raw, it's very primal, and it's one of the most difficult experiences that a human being can go through. It feels like every single thing is stripped from you. It feels like you have no light, no clarity, no peace. It feels like you are in this tailspin and there is nothing and no one that can pause or stop it. And when you're in the middle of it, I want you to remember this. It's just a stage. It's just a phase, just like everything else. It will pass. This too shall pass. This is why I tell everybody, breathe. Just breathe. Focus on one breath after another breath after another breath. All of this horribleness, all of the depression will pass. There are ways of speeding up this process, but not without a ton of personal work. This is called inner work. It's called shadow work. And I want to talk about shadow work for just a moment because I know that this was something that was a huge trend on TikTok for a while and so on. And people falsely believe that shadow work is only a spiritual term or whatever. It is not. Shadow work was actually coined by Carl Jung, Jung. And I would highly advise you guys to look that up, to fall down that rabbit hole. Shadow work is the process of taking the dark parts of yourself, and everyone has a shadow, and healing them and integrating them back into the light. Shadow work is something that when you start doing it, it seems overwhelming. It seems like you are literally trying to move Mount Vesuvius with your pinky finger. But all you got to do is pick away, scrape away a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. If you have a way, if you have someone, if you have a journal, if you have a book, etc., that will help you ease into it, you will find that it is a fantastic thing. Inner work, shadow work is a fantastic thing. A big, fantastic thing. Eventually, you will get to the point where you will do it in a moment by moment basis. I have been doing it since really about 2012, 2013, hardcore since 2014. And now, so here's a fun fact about me. So I'm a redhead. My hair is getting white as I get older. And I'm third generation Irish. I have so much Celtic, Norse, Germanic lineage, it's not even funny. So when I was younger, I was a hothead. I had a temper. I was a yeller. I would throw shit. I reacted and then later went, ooh, I shouldn't have done that. Now, however, I don't react. Very rarely do I react. Because as soon as something happens, I'm like, my brain goes through 90 different things. Why are you reacting like that? What is it in the other person that triggered something in you? Why is it that that's the first place your mind went to? And usually my fourth one is, oh my God, that's fucked up. Why'd you think that? But that happens in a fraction of a second. And I step back and I take the time to process before I say anything. And people sometimes take that as me either being too chicken shit to respond or me not caring or whatever. That's not the case. The case is that I have grown up mentally and I'm an adult and I don't have to immediately say something to everybody. Sometimes I don't need to say anything. And I saw that some people were asking about shadow work. I do teach shadow work, and I will be doing some live classes as well for that. There are recorded classes on my site, but yes, I will be teaching it live again. So, how do you know if you're in a dark night of the soul? Well, here are just a few signs that you are going through a dark night of the soul, okay? 1, you feel isolated from other people, from yourself, and literally from life in general. 2, you feel abandoned by God, by the divine, by any deity, any faith, etc. that you had previously worked with. 3, you feel absolutely lost and you have no idea which direction to take. You can see all the paths in front of you, but you're so lost you can't even take a step forward. 4, you have a deep despair and horror when you look at the world around you. 5, you almost always have a very low mood that is introspective and very melancholy. 6, you have this deep sense of dread that something is going to happen and you don't know what it is. 7, you lose motivation to do the things that you used to love to do. 8, you lose interest in most of the things that you used to love to do. My nose is itching, y'all quit talking about it. 9, you have an extreme exhaustion in your bones for no reason. For no reason. But this is that exhaustion where you can't even move. You have to force yourself to move. 10, and this is a big one. You ponder the meaning of life continually. Continually. It eats up your brain cells. 11, and this is one, these next two are why I always say the things I say after a Reiki session. You feel like you don't belong on this planet anymore. 12, you look around at people and you feel such a disconnect that you don't understand how you're going to move forward being around them. Those last two are what drive people to do very drastic things. Those last two are what drive people to go to the doctor and get on medication. And then medication doesn't help. It makes it worse because you're not depressed. You're going through something internally, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Medication will not change that. It will amplify it. So those are just a few of the symptoms of a dark night of the soul. Everybody experiences it differently. You may go through a really deep, intense one, and then a couple years later go through a small one. You may go through a small one and then a big, deep, intense one. Everybody experiences it differently. So now let's talk about the physical symptoms of a spiritual awakening. Most people don't understand that there are physical symptoms. They think, oh, it's just spiritual. It's just mental, emotional. No. We're going to start with the physical. Words. Number one, and this one right here is one that makes you feel absolutely batshit fucking crazy. Your senses are suddenly amplified. Your smell, your taste, your touch, sight, hearing, everything becomes so intense that you don't want to be around people, places, or things. You might even suddenly find that you are in a category of something called an HSP, highly sensitive person. And yes, this is a physical thing. You can be diagnosed with it. That your senses suddenly are overactive. You find that you can't stand foods you used to love, and you develop almost an allergic reaction to them. And when this happens, trust me, you will fight it. I'm going through that right now with steak. And I'm not happy about it. And I'm letting the universe know very loudly that I'm not happy about it. I love steak. It is one of my favorite food groups. And every time I eat it lately, I get sick. And I'm still going to eat it because I'm stubborn. You will do the same thing. Your sleep patterns change. For example, you sleep more or you sleep less. The less is usually the norm. Or you have very disturbed sleep. You sleep a couple hours, you're awake a couple hours, you sleep 3 or 4 hours, and then you're awake for the day. You begin to have extremely vivid dreams, or you start to have lucid dreams. And I know people are like, well, that's not really a physical thing. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's a change in your brain. It's a change in your chemical makeup of what's happening when you're asleep. You find that you are very dizzy and disoriented throughout the day for no reason. So you're going to go to the doctor and you're going to look for all of these reasons why you're dizzy as shit. And they can't figure it out. So they're going to give you medicine for vertigo, which is going to make you sick as shit. Because you don't have vertigo. This is actually from being ungrounded. Continually ungrounded. Your weight is going to change without reason. Now, for a lot of people, this is losing weight. However, your weight can also shift. Maybe you used to be hourglass shaped and now you're shaped like a pear. Okay, I'm not really a pear, but pretty close. Or vice versa. Your weight will change without reason. Your eating habits will also change without reason. Now, this doesn't really have to do with the foods you can't stand. Suddenly, you're going to be craving things that maybe you've never eaten before. I know with me, when I go through these different periods, right now I'm craving fruit like nobody's business. I eat almost a carton of berries every other day. Raspberries, blackberries, blueberries, almost every other day. You experience fluctuations in your energy. And this isn't just like, oh, blah, blah. No. You're either exhausted or you have so much energy you can't stand your fucking self. Your sex drive changes. It either increases or decreases. And this isn't just a little. When it decreases, it's like you no longer care. When it increases, it's like you can never ever do it enough. And you will go through back and forth, okay? Your immune system decreases and then increases through the roof. So suddenly you're going to start, everything is going to bother you. You're going to catch every little fucking thing that comes along. If you have chronic illnesses, they're going to be super sensitive. And then all of a sudden, you're like steel warrior inside. Now, this isn't a full list of physical symptoms because everybody experiences this differently. But those are the main ones. Now, it's also kind of uncommon to have every single one of them at the same time, but it does happen. And you feel like your whole meat sack is committing mutiny. So let's talk about the emotional and psychological symptoms of a spiritual awakening, because these right here are some of the most damaging ones if you don't know what's going on, and most people don't know what's going on. In a lot of other cultures, especially indigenous cultures around the world, when someone starts to experience these things here, they are taken to an elder. They are taken to a medicine person. They are taken to a shaman. They are taken to the spiritual leader or the spiritual person in their community. They spend time with that person. They talk about that, what's going on, etc. And they help them spiritually before they ever turn to other things. I need to look up the Netflix special about this, but it's fantastic. The way that other parts of the world look at mental health is completely different than the way that the U.S. does. The U.S. just wants to throw medicine at it, and it makes you so much worse if you don't actually have those things. And a lot of people don't actually have some of these things. So let's talk about some of these, okay? The first one, everybody experiences this. You start to crave meaning and purpose in your life. You need to find this meaning, and you need to find out what your purpose is, because it feels like there is a huge chunk missing in there and you can't move forward until you find it. You start to ask really deep philosophical questions because you want to find that meaning and purpose. You start asking why you're here. What happens when I die? Why do good people suffer? If everything happens for a reason, why does that happen? You start to think more philosophically, and you get disturbed when you can't find answers. This one right here is a very hard one for people to deal with, and it's one that I talk to people about continually. You start to realize that a lot of the things that you were taught and that you were told growing up aren't correct. You start to see how different feelings, different beliefs, different values, etc. are not yours, but something that you had pushed on you as a kid. This can be from your parents. It can be from the area you grew up in. It can be from your culture. It can be from whatever. These are called schemas, S-C-H-E-M-A-S. There are ones that you are born with, you are born into, and there are some that you develop throughout your life. Once you hit that, you hit this next one. You start to feel that your life is false. Your life is fake. Everything that you've believed, you've built, you've worked for seems like it's a big fib. It's a lie. And it doesn't feel like it's your life any longer. And you feel like everything that you used to enjoy no longer gives you satisfaction, no longer gives you the fulfillment it used to. And then you start to hit this one. You feel utterly lost and alone. Nothing around you makes sense any longer. You feel like a vagabond. You feel cut off from people, even people that you have known your whole life that love you unconditionally and that are sitting next to you on the couch. You feel 100 miles away from them. You suddenly struggle to relate to people that you are close to, your best friends, your spouse, your significant other, your parents. You start to see through the illusions of society and the world around you. And this one right here is a humongous, deep one. Success, materialism, profit, cars, boats, houses. Suddenly that doesn't have a meaning to you anymore. You realize, and this is the way I put it, it's just shit. I can replace shit. Everybody has shit. I have too much shit. You start to feel like a cog in the big old wheel of society. You're just one of the people helping to push it around. Brings you to this. You want to purge your life of negative or toxic things and people. So now you're sick of negative feelings, things, people, etc. around you, and you're done. You want to be free of them. You also have an overwhelming need to simplify and declutter. You start to throw out things, you find a new job, you move to a new place, you give everything away, you reassess your relationships and your habits. Just overnight. I know people that were the messiest, most cluttered people that suddenly live in like a bright, shining white house with like 2 pieces of furniture. You want to be alone a lot. You start to crave solitude, even if you were a very extroverted person. This one right here is one of the hardest things that I deal with, and I still deal with it. I have always been an extroverted person. I've always loved crowds and being around people, and I am one of those weird nerds that does not have stage fright. I get nervous, don't get me wrong, and I get anxious, but I don't have stage fright. I can't wait to talk to people. Now, I don't like going out as much. I don't mind being on TikTok. I don't mind being in class. I don't mind being on social media because I'm not physically next to you. When I go to conventions, and anybody that's been in a convention with me can tell you this, I have to take multiple breaks now. I'm so sensitive to other people's energy, and y'all will get this way. There is at least 2 to 3 times during an 8-hour period at a convention, I go sit in the bathroom and cry a little bit because I'm overwhelmed. And by the time I get done and I get up to my hotel room, I pretty much face plant. I eat everything I can in front of me and then face plant. I'm absolutely an extroverted introvert now. I need my private time. I need space. I need me. And you don't get in here. Y'all will all get like that. You find that conversations that you used to enjoy are now shallow. You feel separated from people when you talk to them. You find that there are very few people that want to talk about feelings, the soul, the meaning of life, passions, emotions. Small talk irritates the fuck out of you. I don't care what brand of soccer shoes you bought Tommy. I don't care how you mow your grass. Do you mow it straightforward or do you mow it, catty corner? You're going to find that all those little bitty ways of talking and being, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. I want to talk about what happened in the universe. What do you think about what happened when those 2 black holes collided last year? Do you think we're going through timeline shifts? And most people go, I gotta go. This is why we start to separate ourselves from people that we used to be friends with. We no longer give a fuck about gossiping. We no longer give a fuck about who did this or said that. You don't care. It doesn't matter. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. You start to feel like those conversations are for those NPCs. that are never going to have a spiritual awakening. You long for authenticity and truth in every aspect of your life. Being true to who you are becomes your top priority. You stop being around people that are fake. You stop putting on masks that you used to wear just to fit in. You kind of adopt that thing of, it is what it is. I am who I am, and fuck you if you don't like it. You start to avoid those people and those things at all costs. Like, it makes you physically sick to be around fake people anymore. You suddenly see through illusions in society. And with that, it comes this next one. You see and feel how unhappy most of humanity is. And that one's going to hurt you the most. You see and feel the people who are truly unhappy with life. You might start to explore some type of activism or learning about humanity and the human condition. It actually torments you on a deep level to know how much pain there is in the world and that you can't fix it. That one is the one that bothers me the most. You realize that all of your old habits are like lights. They're like beacons. You're painfully aware of any flaws, any negative or destructive habits, the things that you used to do that caused pain to other people. You want to wipe the slate absolutely clean and start over. You will go through states of depression and anxiety like you have never experienced before. The shock of awakening will smack you headlong into a bout of depression and anxiety, and it will leave you feeling absolutely batshit and mentally unstable. Like that, I'm going to stand in the kitchen and rock back and forth and laugh kind of thing. Like that kind of unstable. You probably will go and see a counselor. You will see a therapist. And chances are very high, 80%, that you're going to be misdiagnosed with mental illness from a health professional. They don't understand what a spiritual awakening is because most of them are not allowed to talk about anything at all that could be considered faith-based. Whether it's about God, whether it's about Allah, whether it's about the universe, it is faith-based. Chances are they're also going to diagnose you and give you medication, which is going to make you worse. You have this fear and uncertainty that follows you around where you never had this before. We already talked about becoming more sensitive as far as your senses go, but this is you becoming more sensitive in general. Everything now impacts you on such a deep level. You feel other people's energies and vibes stronger than you ever have. You suddenly can walk into a room and go, oh, that person right there is not a good person. That person right there is in tremendous pain. I need to go hug them. This person right here, I need to talk to. Like, you just get it suddenly. But it also makes you pull back from people because you don't want to feel the things. So you start to have a more deep connection with animals, with your animals especially, and nature. I always say, I can't people today. I can't people today. You experience deep compassion and empathy because you're now paying attention to the hardships that everyone else in humanity faces. You find that your empathy is crazily awakened. It's through the roof, and it can be hard to cope with those feelings. This right here can be a change that can make or break you. You either numb yourself to feeling that, to that pain, or find healthy ways to express your emotions and to accept it and go forward. Your intuition is heightened. And this is another one that makes you feel absolutely batshit crazy. You find that your gut feelings are stronger than ever. and you allow it to start guiding you more and more and more and more. And when you do this, you start to find gifts and hidden talents that you either never knew you had or that you shut the door on as a kid. You really want to know who you are. You have all these questions that spiral through your brain, and it starts with pondering your own existence, and it moves from there. You might start reading, researching, seeking out who you were. You might start doing your DNA. You might start learning about your past. You might start doing genealogy. You might start looking into your astrology charts, your birth charts. You want to make the world a better place. You start thinking about the big picture and how to make a real impact on things, and how can you help others, and how can you find a purpose in your life that helps you align with this view of helping other people. Now, here's one right here that gets a lot of people in trouble. Are you ready? You quit your job to do something more meaningful, but you don't know what that more meaningful thing is. You start thinking about, well, I know I stayed here this long, I worked this hard, I'm in upper management, or I've got these degrees and so on, and I hate this. The thing that you used to do now gives you such a profound emptiness deep inside that it's not fulfilling, and you don't give a fuck. You can't run from it fast enough. It gets a lot of people in trouble because they don't have something else to go to. Because the humans around you, the electric company, rent your car, they don't give a fuck where you are in your spiritual awakening. So you have to have a plan, okay? You have to have a plan. You start to love unconditionally. Barriers of your ego are now breaking down, and you find that you love other people without any expectations or conditions. Now, I know some people will be like, well, I was like that before. No, you weren't. You expected something in return. You only dated or talked to certain people. You didn't like talking to people that looked like this or did this or whatever. You had expectations. And if someone didn't give you the love back that you were giving, you were done. This one right here is going to make you feel batshit crazy too when it starts to happen. You start to feel more synchronicity. You start to see signs everywhere. You become more receptive to them, more interactive with them, and you have deja vu and this serendipitous feeling continually. These increase exponentially. You might even have multiple mystical experiences on a daily basis, which then makes you feel even more disconnected from the world around you. You have more wonder and curiosity. Little bitty tiny things bring you intense joy and bliss. Life around you is not ignored any longer. It's now magical and amazing. You see that every single being in the universe is one. You start to feel on a deep, deep level and understand very intellectually that we're all interconnected. You start to see thoughts and beliefs that influence the reality around you, and that we're all fragments of the whole, of spirit, of the one, of the universe, of whatever you choose to call it. And once you fully see all of this, once you start to come into all of this oneness, you start to find a little bit of peace in the mental and emotional things. The problem is that can take a whole lifetime and sometimes can never be achieved. So, how long do spiritual awakenings last? You ready for this part? The rest of your life. Once you start it, it never ends. It never ends. The intensity of it wanes and flows as you go forward. You can have periods where it's very calm and quiet and you move forward and so on. And then you have intense, fucking chaotic periods of change and shift. And you are on that white rapid ride, and you just kind of have to go with it until you hit the next little plateau. If you see this as a vibrant journey along the way, if you see this as a magical experience instead of stops, instead of problems, instead of being lost, you will be much happier with these cycles. And this is why I always tell people, enjoy being lost. Enjoy being lost, because you don't ever know how lost you are until you find that plateau again. And then you long to be lost again, because the plateau is boring. The plateau is boring. It's the being lost. It's the rapids that are exciting, even though they're hard as fuck. It's the rapids that are exciting. So what do you do after you hit a spiritual awakening? Once you start down the path of a spiritual awakening, it's vital that you start to explore the things that interest you. Now, here's the thing. When you hit a spiritual awakening, then you come out of that dark night of the soul, you want to learn everything right now. All of it right now, in my brain right now. You cannot learn things fast enough, and you will overwhelm yourself. So, take a breath, and you have to make a priority of, this is the main thing I want to learn. These main 3 things or whatever. Now, here's the cool thing about this. As you start to explore 1 or 2 things that interest you, all these other things are going to pop up. And I know when I said that, you went, no! Follow the rabbit hole. Follow the rabbit hole. You may start off just maybe learning about divination, about tarot cards. And then say next, you're suddenly into scrying. And then you're into hieroglyphs. And then you're like, you suddenly just follow the rabbit hole. Just follow the rabbit hole where it leads you. Because it's going to lead you where your talents lie, where your gifts are. I promise. Take the time to learn about all the different spiritual paths around you. There's not just one. This is the thing that cracks me up when people try to tell me, well, you have to follow the threefold law. No, I don't, because that's Wiccan and I'm not Wiccan. You have to follow the tenfold law. No, I don't, because that's Christian and I'm not Christian. You have to follow this rule or that rule. No, I don't, because I don't believe in that. I wasn't raised that way. Now, if you are Wiccan and you start to read that doctrine and you follow it, awesome. If you need structure to follow, awesome. I was raised in a way where I had so many different slices of me, of my ancestors, of my lineage. I practice all of them. You guys are the same way. You don't fit into one little category, one little box. And you don't have to make yourself fit into one little box. You also want to continue to do inner work, shadow work, as you go along. And you want to learn how to ground yourself and stay grounded. Now, here's the thing with this. Even though I've been doing this my whole life and I feel like I know how I need to ground, okay? There are still so many times that I feel so ungrounded. I feel like I'm literally not attached to the earth. Like, I feel like I'm going to fall and float off. Like, that's how I feel sometimes. So you have to reground all the time and find ways that help you ground, okay? You need to have your energy cleared. You need to have your chakras cleared. You have things balanced and aligned. And the thing is, you can't just do this once and go, I'm good, and walk off. As you're around other people, as you're around shit people, as you're around fantastic people, some of that rubs off on you. That's why people's auras get muddy and bogged down. That's why your energy shifts after you're around someone that's super positive. At first you might be like, dude, like I can't handle your positivity today. But then the rest of the day, you're super positive. It rubs off on you. This is why when you're around super hateful, toxic people or shit people, it rubs off on you and you're in a shit mood. And the last part of this little section is continue to learn on your journey. Always be learning something. Always be learning something. So let's talk about the 7 stages of a spiritual awakening. Now, just like the stages of grief, none of these have to be experienced in this order, and they probably won't. You will go back and forth over and over. I mean, you're going to be in one of these things for the rest of your life. So number 1 is the dark night of the soul that we talked about. This is the first stage, normally the first stage for everyone, because this is what happens after that traumatic event happens and you're suddenly in this dark night of the soul. This is confusion, it's disconnection, it's depression, it's alienation with your life and life in general. You know that you're searching for something, but you have no fucking idea what it is. There is this empty hole in there, and it just is. This is going to happen repeatedly on your spiritual awakening path. It's not just one and done. Shifting perspectives. You start to perceive your reality in a completely different way. You start to see through the lies. You start to see through all the delusions that are propagated by society. You feel unhappy with life. You are severely disturbed by the suffering and the ills of the world. You no longer see life the way you did. The next stage is seeking answers and meanings. There has to be a point to everything, right? Right? You ask all the deep, deep questions. You search for your purpose in life. You search for your spiritual destiny. You search for the meaning of life itself. You start dabbling in a bunch of self-help, metaphysical, esoteric fields, looking for the answers, looking for the truth. The next phase is finding the answers and experiencing breakthroughs. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. After a lot of soul searching, you're going to find gurus, teachers, mentors, practices, belief systems that ease your existential suffering. Now, we're going to talk about spiritual bypass here in just a second, because that right here happens in this phase. You're going to feel a sense of expansion as all these old things dissolve and the new part of yourself comes out. You may have massive mystical experiences or brief moments of enlightenment that give you a glimpse into the ultimate nature of reality. This is a big, big phase of joy and connection and hope and awe with the universe around you. But this is also where a lot of spiritual bypassing occurs. Spiritual bypassing is when you decide to stay in one phase. I'm happy, and I'm happy right here with the things I've learned. So as long as I don't grow or continue to move too much further, and I only keep myself in this box, I'm okay. Until you bypass everything else. Bypass everything else. Then you have the 5th stage. Disillusionment and feeling lost again. And I know y'all went, motherfucker. Life is about movement. The universe is about balance. With the spiritual awakening process, there's always an ebb and a flow. And in this stage, you start to get bored with your teachers and your gurus and your mentors and your practices. And you start to move away from them. And then you get illusioned by some of the fake spiritual bullshit that's out there, and you crave something deeper. So you feel like what you were just practicing might have been bullshit, and now you've got to move forward. You may have even been in stage 4, that connective, and you may have experienced long periods of connection with the divine, with the universe, with God, only to become separated again. And this is normal, okay? It's disturbing, and you can be really upset by this experience, and usually it flings you back into a dark night of the soul. And you may have just experienced tons of breakthroughs, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and now you feel like that's all superficial, and none of it matters. The thing is, it does matter. All of those breakthroughs you had mattered. They all mattered. They were part of your growth. They were part of your experience. They were part of you. So don't ever discount all of those breakthroughs that you had, okay? You're going to search for more. The next phase is deep inner work. In this phase, you start to dabble in philosophies and practices that they cause some pain, but they heal that trauma. You are not interested in all of those feel-good, woo-woo things anymore. You need to heal the trauma. You need to heal the pain. You do a lot of inner child work, of shadow work, of mindfulness, meditation, body work, inner transpersonal philosophies. Like, you really fall down the rabbit hole again. It's a time of really intensive growth when you're in that phase. The next phase is integration, expansion, and joy. And this is where you take all of the spiritual lessons that you've learned from your inner work and you apply them to your daily life. It happens naturally. Like, you don't have to consciously go, okay, I have learned this and this and this. I am now going to apply this here and here and here. It doesn't work that way. You just automatically start doing it. And then you just kind of realize, oh, I'm doing it. Like, you kind of get that little kid epiphany moment, like, oh my God. This is where you develop deep spiritual habits and practices, and you experience the most profound and long-lasting phases of joy. You also have a lot of deep connection with the universe, with the divine, with spirit. Now, the one thing I want you to remember is that enlightenment or full self-realization is never guaranteed with a spiritual awakening or in your lifetime in general. We can strive for it, and it is an ultimate gift from life, from the universe. It is a profound peace, love, joy. All of those things are felt in this stage. But you'll know deep inside if you have actually reached enlightenment or not. Very few people do. Very few souls do. In this stage, you may be ready to be a role model to other people. You may be ready to learn to teach. You may be ready to learn to be a spiritual mentor to people around you. To pass on your insight to other people. Life will become less about you and more about we. Your perspective expands. You start seeing things from the bigger picture, and you start to feel connected at kind of a peace within yourself and aligned with where you need to go in life. It is absolutely possible to be in 2 or more phases together. You can actually be in that deep inner work and be in a dark night of the soul at the same time. You can be in the expansion and joy and be in the deep inner work at the same time. All of these can be together, and they go back and forth. It's not a linear process. Look at it like the stages of grief. You are going to shift back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now, the one thing that I will say is when you hit this last stage and you decide you want to start teaching, you want to start being a mentor, learn how to do that first. Because a lot of people want to start helping people around them, but they don't know where to start. They don't know how to speak to people. Maybe they've never had a role where they're in front of people and they're really uncomfortable talking to people. But they're brilliant writers. Sometimes you don't have to physically be in front of someone talking. You can write it down. You can write a book. It doesn't have to be a long book. You can write articles. You can write blog posts. And you can help so many more people than you ever realized. And then there are times when you have no problem being in front of people and you like to yak like I do. And so social media, there you go. I also write. But don't feel pushed to walk someone else's footprints, to walk someone else's path and exactly how they do something. Make it your own, because it's your path, not theirs. So now that I have completely blown your minds and all of you are going, oh my God, I have been in all of these phases, or oh my God, I'm here, or I'm here, or I'm here. Now, I am more than happy to answer some questions. So, yeah. One of the things that I have found with a spiritual awakening is that once you realize you're in one, and once you realize that you've hit so many of these phases, or you're in a certain one right now, you kind of need a moment. You're just like, I need to process. Like, I need all of the wine, I need a mega pint, and I need to sit outside in the rain listening to some meditative music because my brain just melted through the floorboards of the earth. And I can't brain right now. And I understand that. I really do. Because as you guys start to go through your spiritual awakening phases, and you start to hit some of these phases, and now that you know about them, you're probably sitting there like, holy fuck balls. You're like, I've been through this and this. And then you're like, oh God, I got to go through that. Because there are some of them that, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I don't want to go through them again. I know I'm going to have to, but I don't want to go through them again. So don't let that part hang you up, okay? Because the universe is going to make you go through those phases whether you like it or not. It's just going to happen. So you just kind of learn to roll with it. It is what it is. You're going to start saying that a lot more. It is what it is. And it won't just be because you heard it on a video or whatever. It'll come out of your face one day and you'll go, okay. Because you actually believe that. One of the things that I say all the time, especially with when things happen, is it is what it is and it was what it was. Obviously, that didn't need to be in my life anymore. And I'm okay. I'm okay with that. So, yeah. I know somebody asked about what a good book is to start studying and paying attention to some of these things. One of the books that I recommend to everybody really doesn't have anything to do so much with a spiritual awakening, but you will enjoy it. So it is called Becoming Nobody by Ram Dass, Ramdass. And if you are an audiobook person, I highly recommend getting it on Audible because it's read in his voice. He reads it and he's no longer here. And he kind of has this dry way of speaking and sense of humor. And so hearing it in his voice, yeah, it's fantastic. Becoming Nobody. He has a whole bunch of fantastic books, but that's one I usually recommend to everybody that's starting to go through a spiritual awakening, their spiritual process. For those of you guys that were raised in a Southern Baptist way, for those of you guys that were raised in a light Christian aspect, there is a great book that I recommend to everybody, especially if you're struggling with the Christian aspect of your upbringing and suddenly, I don't know that I believe that anymore. It's called Backwoods Witchcraft, and it's by Jake Richards. Yes, it's on Audible as well. It will blow your mind. It will blow your mind. So he was raised in the Appalachians. And the first time that I read the book, like I have given the book away to multiple people. I have it on audio. I've listened to it repeatedly. There are so many things in there that he's going to talk about that are American folk magic practices that almost every single Southern Baptist or Baptist person grew up doing that are not in the Bible. It will blow your mind. I'm not kidding. So those are two that I recommend starting with. And the good thing about it is both of them have an aspect of humor to them. So they're not this like just horrible dry read. One of them has to deal more with your inner self, with you're becoming who you need to be, and the other one has to deal with actual practices and beliefs and stuff that I guarantee, even if you weren't raised Baptist, even if you weren't really raised super Christian, if you were raised in the US, you grew up hearing about some of these things, doing some of these things, etc. I promise. So yeah, so it's Becoming Nobody from Ram Dass and Backwoods Witchcraft by Jake Richards. And yeah, it's fantastic. I highly recommend both of them. I'm having that issue with the hot and the cold again, and I'm probably going to die. So yeah. So, what other questions do we have? Or is everybody's brain just like, I can't brain now? Because that's usually what happens, is everybody's brain melts. So yeah. Well, I guess with that, I'll close out of the class here. And yeah. Processing, not melting. Yeah, that can be it too. Processing, not melting. So yeah. Well, I hope that you guys have a good day, and I'll see you next Saturday. I'm glad you guys joined me. And for those of you guys here on TikTok, how are you? So that right there, I fucked up on my mentorship classes, and I decided to teach a live class for everybody in my mentorship classes and do it here for you guys. And I'm so glad I did, because guess what? I fucked up as well in that I didn't record the class. But I recorded it here. TikTok saves the world. So yeah. So there you go. That's one of the first classes in my mentorship program. So I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and I will put it up. I'll probably put it on YouTube since it was a live class, because it's an hour-long class. It's an hour-long class. So I teach these every Saturday morning at 11, live classes. They are on private Zooms. Just today was the first class. I may do some more where I teach some more, but I have been teaching a long time, a long time. So the books again are Becoming Nobody by Ram Dass and Backwoods Witchcraft by Jake Richards. Good. I'm glad that I helped a lot of you guys. So enjoy those books. With shadow work, I haven't really found a great book that I am like, oh my God, this book on shadow work. So because it's so different, I do teach shadow work. And I guess there was a lot of questions here and a lot of questions in class. I guess that I'm going to have to start. Live classes for shadow work again. So yeah. You're welcome, guys. With that, I am going to get off here and go eat some lunch and take my migraine medicine, because it just started pouring down rain again. And I feel like I got slammed in the temple with a hammer. So that's fun. All right, guys. I love you guys, and I'll see you later. Yes?